Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we're looking at another JoJo's Bizarre Adventure figure. This is K Crimson version Blue. This is obviously a super action statue figure, just like all the other JoJo's figures. And I have to say, despite its rather unique design, which isn't generally something I would go for, it's a pretty well-made figure, and they did a good job putting it together, which is really just two different ways of saying the same thing. So I've repeated myself. And then I mentioned it, so I kind of did it a third time. Let's get him off the stand and take a closer look, instead of having me ramble on and on about the figure without actually saying anything, like I'm doing now. If you are familiar with the JoJo's figures, you know they're slightly taller than most other imports. This guy comes in at just about 17 centimeters, which makes him just about 6 3/4 inches tall. Definitely has a little bit of height to him. Not the bulkiest figure, but he's got some nice proportions. I think he looks pretty good. You'll notice he's got a lot of sculpted detail. All of those pink lines, that's all sculpted. Everything on here that could be sculpted is, so I think that's pretty cool. And they nailed the paint job. It's pretty well done. If you look at those lines up close, it's all there. I mean, it's not 100% perfect, but you can't really expect that at a figure at this price point. It's really well done. Considering how intricate that is, even though it doesn't look that intricate, that's really a pain in the butt to paint. I would never do something like that on a custom, unless it was going to be a really expensive custom. So that's awesome that they did that. They did a really good job, and we have a lot of shading like we always do on the JoJo's figures. You can see it's kind of like a pearly whitish pink shading going on here. Same thing for the shoulder pads. Very, very nice paint job, and then even on the face, even more intricate detail. So really, really good looking figure, and that's pretty much the case for all of the JoJo's figures. So if you're a JoJo's fan, this is definitely the line you want to get into. Let's look at the accessories before we go into the rest of the figure. We do have an alternate head, so you have the standard head, and then you have the yelling head. They just pop off and pop back on, so that's pretty cool. Nicely sculpted, nicely detailed. We have the fist hands that are on the figure in the package, so we have those obviously. We always have fist hands. And another thing we always have is style pose hands. We need these. We need our style pose hands. We don't need the cat hair. My cats are shedding like crazy right now. It's a pain in the butt. But we have these, which are still nicely shaded, pearly whitish pink with the gold studs on there, so that's cool. We have some, these are kind of style posed hands, but I would put them more in the category of just relaxed hands. But we have those. Then we have these, which are kind of in the same category of as the other ones. And they might be for more signature poses, I don't know. And then we also have these. So we have the pointing finger, which is kind of a staple of the JoJo's figures. And we have this one, which is a unique hand for this guy. It has a spear going through it, and you see it's sculpted to have torn glove and flesh. So that's pretty cool. Nice paintwork on there. Nice detail. Looks really nice. And then our last accessory is the display stand. We have the display stand that holds up the characters behind the figure if you want him there. So you can put him on the stand and those are there. Or you can take this whole apparatus off and put on our standard style display stage to hold up the figure. Unfortunately, you cannot do both, so that's a bit of a bummer. But it's still not too bad. It's nice that they included it. So let's talk about articulation. We already know it's sculpted well and painted well. Most of these figures have really nice articulation, and some of it's not as functional as we would like. But this guy, it's pretty much nice and functional, so that's a good thing. The head, ball pegs for the head and for the neck. I'm not sure. Sometimes the necks are just hinged, and I can't really tell if this one is. It doesn't move that much. It feels like it's a hinge, but it could be a ball peg. But the head itself is a ball peg, so you'll be able to move it around pretty well. The shoulder pads are a perfect example of how to do a shoulder pad properly. They are on their own articulation. So you can move the arm up and down independent of the shoulder pad, so that's really good. And the shoulder pad moves with the arm. It's connected to the shoulder, so it doesn't get in the way of that articulation. So you have the full range all the way horizontal, and you can spin it all the way around. Of course, the sculpt itself is getting in the way. The torso is sculpted asymmetrically, so the arm bumps up against it. But pretty much, you can spin it around. You just have to force it a little bit, so that's good. It's fine. Our bicep swivel's in there, no problem at all. Double jointed elbow, gives you a good range of motion. Nice looking elbow joint. Technically, you can swivel the arm at the bicep and at the forearm. However, these figures are often really stiff in that regard because of the way the joints are made. There's a little bit of flashing on the peg that goes into the socket, so it won't want to swivel. So you have to be careful. You could break it, but it is technically possible. And then for the wrist, we have our little tiny ball hinge with a straight peg for the hand. So the hands come off pretty easily, sometimes too easily, but you know you're not going to break anything, so that's good. And then, of course, these guys are separate, and it fell off accidentally, but that way I could show you. The little wrist guard is separate, so it'll move around with the hand however you need it to for your posing. So that's a really good thing. I hate it when those hand guards are sculpted onto or wrist guards are sculpted onto the figure. Let's say it's sculpted on right here. Why aren't we focused? What's going on, camera? Do your job. So if this is sculpted onto the forearm and you want to rotate the hand, sometimes you have to leave it like that and it looks bad, but this will let you spin it around. So that's a good detail to add. I'm happy about that. For the torso, we have a ball peg at the top and a ball peg at the bottom, so you can move it around. This is a separate piece from the top and the bottom of those three pink things, so it'll move around no problem. And technically you can move the torso around on top of that top pink thing, so you have pretty good range. It's not the best in the world, but it's pretty solid and it'll look really natural once he's posed. And the crotch piece is floating, so it'll get out of the way if you need it to. The hips aren't the best. We just have a standard ball peg going into this socket, which means you can move the socket around this way all you want, no problem at all. However, out to the side is very limited, and that's not great. It's not terrible, but it's not great, so it could be a problem for some people. You do have a thigh swivel in here, so if you wanted to, you could spin that socket piece all the way around and then rotate the leg to bring it out to the side a little bit more, but it's not the best situation. It looks pretty good and it's mostly really functional, but not 100%. Double jointed knee works really well, no problems there. And then for the ankles, we have a ball hinge just like in the wrist, but it because of these side pieces right here that are connected to the leg, you're not going to be able to do much other than bend the foot forward and back. You can't really rotate it around to get that ankle rocker. So that's a bit of a bummer, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And then lastly, we have a toe hinge, which is really floppy, but I suppose it's okay if you're going to use the display stand. So all in all, it's a really good figure, mostly really well executed articulation, and it's nicely painted, nicely sculpted. Really can't complain too much, so I definitely recommend it. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see my upcoming figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. And in the meantime, keep collecting.